I'm Dane Whitmire. I'm one of the presenters for Cross Country Classics, and this is my 1962 Buick Skylark. It has a 215 cubic inch V8, all aluminum, of course pushrod for the time, with a 4-barrel carb that was actually a predecessor to the Quadrajet. Swapped in from the original single-speed automatic with variable torque converter pitch control is a T5 5-speed manual. This is the second one. First one gave out after a mixture of probably a bit of error between too much torque for it and just kind of not the right angle for the drive shaft. This is my daily driver. It was my first car for a while. It was my only car, so I have to take good care of it, or at least as good of care of it as time will allow, because if I don't, I can't get to work or school. You'll notice now it has a weird colored hood on it. It's not normally like that, it's just the other hood, the stud snapped, so while I wait to find time to weld that back together, I borrowed this hood from my other 62 Skylark, which you'll learn about later. This car was originally built in the San Diego plant, or the Southern California plant. It lived a lot of its life up in Santa Rosa, and after that it went to Washington for a brief time, so unfortunately there is some corrosion on the underside of the car, but it's nothing bad, just, you know, a few holes here and there. Eventually after that it was brought back. It was actually a grandma car for a while. She kept good care of it though, so did well. It got its engine rebuilt 5 years before I bought it, and I've owned it for about two and a half years now. And obviously I take as good a care of it as I can, but since it is my daily, I can't, you know, leave it up on jack stands for a week or two. It really offers a unique experience to drive this, and I think that's really why I drive it. You know, there's a lot of cars that are fast. There's a lot of cars where you put your foot down and, you know, you go fast and you can feel it kick. But very few cars are, you know, as luxurious as this, and as soft a ride and as comfortable as this, but are still old enough to all be analog. There's no driver assistant, there's no, you know, ABS, there's no traction control. So I really enjoy it over modern cars. It's not as boring as modern cars in my opinion. And when I went to buy my first car, I knew I wanted something old. If I could, I would like a V8, and no matter what, it had to be manual. And this thing just happened to be a V8, lightweight, fun, also comfortable, manual, even though it wasn't meant to be manual, and my favorite color. So really just a perfect car, but driving this thing is really like nothing else. I mean, I've driven at least 20 other cars to varying extents so far, and the only thing that compares to this is my boss's 62 Skylark, which obviously makes sense. So this was rated at, this year would be 190 horsepower at about 4,800 RPM, and it would make about 235, 245 torque at 2,400 RPM. It's you know, it's not much, but the thing is, it's all, you know, that 2,400 RPM for the torque. You really feel that. It's when you push on the gas, you know, an inch further, you know that there's torque right there. Obviously there's no turbo lag, and it's not like an automatic or modern cars that are underpowered and small, where you step on it and you have to wait for, you know, like $5,000 for power to come on. You step on it and there's always just power waiting for you. And that's really just one of the main things I love about it. But all that is, a lot of it anyway, is attributed to the fact that it only weighs 2,800 pounds. It's a really lightweight car for its time, and especially considering like the Buick Electra was in the 4,000s of pounds, this thing is still massive, smaller than an Electra, and it weighs next to nothing, partially because it's a monocoque construction. I feel like it's I guess I have a Buick Skylark in particular, just because it has the power, but is comfortable, And on top of all that, it's rare. And I really love the rare oddball things. I mean, you know, you go to Cars and Coffee and you see a bunch of Mustangs, you see a bunch of Novas, you know, those are basic cars. I've only ever seen one of these, that's my own. And then to get my second one, I had to go all the way to LA. And when I found it, I wasn't looking for this car, I just happened to see it and instantly fell in love with just how cool this car is. It's pretty innovative for its day. I mean, these things have some of the first production V6s in them. Thankfully mine doesn't, mine has the V8. But some of the first production aluminum block engines in the V8. Another pretty, you know, ahead of its time thing for the engine is that it ran 11:1 compression for this year. Earlier ones were 10 1/4 to 1. Because of that, I do have to run 9:1, which it's expensive, especially in California, but you know, it's worth it. It's part of what you pay for the fun of it. And that 11:1 compression not only means that you can get, you know, 190 horsepower out of 215 cubic inches, which is nearing a 1-to-1 ratio, which is amazing, but it also means it's rated for 15 miles per gallon, and that's with the factory 4-speed, where 4th is direct drive. So since I have a 5th, essentially a 5th gear, which just tacks on an overdrive, it means that I get pretty good gas mileage. I've yet to calculate it, but you know, I fill up every 2 weeks, and it's, you know, 40 to 50 bucks every time I fill up. It's not bad for, you know, such an old car. Some of the repairs, when I first got it, the brakes went out and I had to get a new hose, which was on the passenger side front. When I went to try and get that hose off, especially back then 2 years ago before I had a proper set of tools, I just could not get it out of the wheel cylinder. So I went ahead and just bought a new wheel cylinder while I was at it. In hindsight, that was probably a good idea because currently one of the rear wheel cylinders has begun to leak. The main thing I've been doing to this car is brake work. Originally I started with dirt bikes and motorcycles. That was like my first vehicle, or one of my main, you know, first interests. That was when I was 7 or so, and I got my first dirt bike right before I turned 8. And from there, you know, it kind of extended. I mean, my parents were always there, you know, showing me Hot Wheels and old cars, stuff like that. And it really started taking off probably middle school. I saw a lot of shows, kids would get a car when they're 12 or so, and there would just be a pile of metal. And they would build it up and build it up and work, and by the time they're 16 and able to drive, they'd have a driving car that looked great, and they knew every, you know, square inch of it. And originally that was what I wanted to do, but my parents were having. So eventually what it ended up being is I got a driving car when I was 16, but I think it's really just the fact that there's so much to personalize and so much to change in a car over, you know, a dirt bike or a street bike. There's so much more, you know, material that you can change and make, you know, an expression of yourself or an extension of yourself. And I think that's really just how cars have it down, because you can't do that with much else apart from maybe boats, but even then, you know, despite the fact you have so much material, you have to think about, you know, hydrodynamics and all that. So cars are one of the few things where you can just really go all out and just customize it how you want, and then you get to drive it around town and show everyone. It's almost kind of therapeutic in a way. You put on some good music and you start driving and you don't have to do anything else. You can sit there and you can just drive.
Flavor Town.